and welcome to Ready STEM Go, where we talk about the big STEM questions floating around with our QUT researchers, students and alumni. My name is Nicola and I'm a final year student here at QUT studying science and communication. And I've got the privilege of chatting to our experts throughout this series. We're here today at the QUT Esports Arena, so we'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people as the First Nations owners on the land on which QUT now stands, and recognise that these places have always been places of research, teaching and learning, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and that sovereignty was never ceded. With me today is the leader of the Games Research and Interaction Design Lab and Professor in the Bachelor of Games and Interactive Environments, Daniel Johnson. Today we'll be focusing in on his experience with the psychology of human-computer interactions and video games as we explore the question, can gaming improve our mental health? Welcome, Daniel. It's lovely to have you. So, can gaming improve our mental health?
Absolutely. You know, it's a great source of need satisfaction. It makes us feel good at what we're doing. It helps us connect with other people, and it really allows us a sense of freedom and autonomy.
So what are some of the ways that gaming can improve our mental health?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I think most gamers have a sort of instinct for why this is, but often when you ask them, it's hard to articulate. So our research has looked at it through a number of lenses, but I think the most understandable one is self-determination theory, which really shows us that video games are great at making us feel good at doing something. They give us a sense of freedom, but it turns out they're amazing ways to connect with each other. Then you add to that things like flow and immersion, so being fully immersed. You know, I think the idea of escapism sometimes gets a bad rap with video games. You know, I talk to our students about how there's always concerns about new media, and lots of people are aware of, you know, we all sort of have some knowledge of the concerns about rock and roll and that terribly dangerous Dungeons and Dragons. But it's really interesting, Nicola, if you look a bit further back, there are some amazing quotes and pieces of research that are about the dangers of things like novel reading, and in particular the dangers of fiction novel reading. And, you know, we think about today and how excited parents might be if their children pick up a fiction novel, and not that long ago there were real concerns about that. Even more surprising, you go a little bit further back and there are concerns about chess playing and how chess might be encouraging young people to think in sneaky ways and set traps, and sometimes it's great to just immerse yourself in a different world and escape for a little bit. So I think those are the main ways, and those things lead to just all sorts of benefits that we see around vitality, a better sense of self, just sort of relaxation, all the obvious things. But I think the big misconception we're tackling at the moment is that we should focus on the video game first, and I think what we need to be looking at is the person, their context, their surrounding issues, so that we don't sort of head down the wrong path in those situations.
Yeah, that's a really great major misconception. And to see the history of that is really interesting. So what's something you've learned throughout your research that you think more young people should know?
If I'm picking one, I think we did a project called MindMax, which was all about it. It was using video games and sport to engage people with mental health resources. It was a great project in collaboration with Movember, who do terrific work, and also the AFL Players Association, some other groups as well. And I think one of the things that came out that we really need to keep focusing on in that sort of space is empowering people, young people, but everyone, to talk about mental health issues. The stigma that's still around that sort of thing is really such a barrier. So I think normalising being able to say, look, I'm having a tough time today, or I'm not coping well with this, that or the other, I think that's a really important thing to get to, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely agree on that. We've recently seen reports of women experiencing discrimination and harassment in the gaming community. So what are some things that could be done, in your opinion, to ensure that young women and non-binary gamers feel welcome and included in online gaming spaces?
Look, it's a really important issue. It's one of the areas, it's interesting for me, most of what I do is, I think, while we're trying to understand the harms of gaming, a lot of it is reassuring people that really there's less to worry about than you might think, and that there's lots of opportunities for benefit. But this is the area in which I think it's least possible to say that. This is the area in which gamers as a community, and I include myself in that community, are doing most poorly. We have to do better, and I think in some ways it's not necessarily for people like me to say how this problem should be fixed, and I think There are lots of people who should have a stronger voice in that space speaking out. What I try to do and what I try to encourage people in our classes to think about is, if you're not in one of these groups, then make sure you're an ally. Call out bad behaviour. Think about how your own behaviour might be impacting people in ways that you're not necessarily cognizant of every day. Be more mindful and listen for what other people are saying and try to understand the ways in which you can be part of the solution.
Yeah, I think that's a really great response. So what are some of the exciting trends that you've spotted in the games industry, and what new career opportunities could come out of this?
There's a few different things that I'll pick up on there. I think one obvious one that comes up all the time is the technology is advancing so quickly, and that offers us a number of opportunities. As graphics but it's more than just the visuals, right? As the level of immersion that we're able to create in a virtual world increases, a number of things happen. We can create even more engaging and immersive narratives and storylines and experiences. We can connect with each other in more nuanced ways, where we might have only had voice at one point. Now I might be able to see, how you're moving around a space in a virtual environment. I can see in much more detail or fidelity what you're doing in the game. And that creates, I think, amazing opportunities for socializing, for strategizing, for creating much more complex interactions in strategic senses within game worlds. What's possible in games is getting better and more amazing, but that at the same time is creating much more nuanced and in-depth experiences outside of games. So, when I can take an incredibly detailed world, what I might be able to do in terms of connecting people on different sides of the globe, or connecting family members who aren't able to be in the same space, that can apply within games, but it also really applies in a number of other settings. And we're seeing more and more industries, health, education, even finance, all these people who are suddenly understanding that if we can create these really immersive, engaging worlds, that can be really useful in a huge range of settings.
Yeah. So what are some of the skills that someone that's hoping to go into maybe the games and environments industry should look for?
Look, I think there's all the obvious ones. There's the ones that I think people expect. You need to understand the obvious stuff around, you need to know programming if you're going into the programming strand. You need to know a lot about art and animation there. And I think there's surrounding stuff is really important too. So understanding a bit of psychology, you won't be surprised to say, I'm of the opinion that that's really important. But what motivates people, how they'll experience the space is really important. But the main thing that we talk to our students a lot, and people even at Open Day here at QUT, what we talk to aspiring game developers and designers is start making games now. There's no reason, there's nothing to stop you building your portfolio from a very early point. So it's about those skills, but I think it's also about getting your hands dirty and getting stuck into some game development as soon as possible. So I think it's really important for people that want to get into this space to start thinking about building a game now, but also building a portfolio. And what we're really focusing on in the degree at the moment is trying to get our students to look at their body of work and always be thinking, what could I add to this as it builds and develops that'll make me the ideal employee for my perfect employer? In particular, we're trying to get our students to think about, well, if you've made 5 or 6 mouse and keyboard based games, maybe it's time to do something in VR. Or if everything you've built is focused on the game world, maybe it's time to apply those skills in a non-gaming setting. So I think for people thinking about getting into it, there's no reason not to start that now. Start thinking about what would be in your portfolio, what are the strengths you want to build, and what do you want to show your future collaborators and employers.
Yeah, and I guess that's why it's so exciting as well for when you're studying that degree at QUT, your lecturers are actually researching or working in the field, so they can bring that up-to-date industry knowledge to the classroom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the games degree in particular, we are all passionate gamers as well. So we have that immediate kind of connection with the students, and we are playing the latest titles where we can, and we have our own passions. And I confess to my students sometimes how much time I spent on particular games at different points in my life. But I think also, yeah, we are working with different games companies, different parts of industry. We're being asked to apply the skills that we're teaching our students in different spaces. But the other great thing, and it's really strengthening lately in Brisbane, we're having more and more games companies really flourish. So we're building really great connections, and they're very generous with their time, which is wonderful. And so in a lot of our classes, we're able to bring them in at key moments to kind of directly speak about what they're doing and what they're looking for. In particular, we've had Gameloft come in and talk about their actual hiring process and what they're looking for, and they've been hiring directly out of our course, which is just
so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. So thank you so much, Daniel, for your time today. It's been really interesting hearing about your research into gaming. I'm sure our audience would have found it just as intriguing and fascinating as I did.
Thanks, Nicola. It was great to chat.
Lovely. So keep an eye out for our other Ready STEM Go episodes.